Hello everyone, welcome to our animated philosophy series where we explore timeless concepts in a modern context. Today we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating early ideas from Ludwig Wittgenstein, his picture theory of meaning as outlined in his first major work, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. This theory is part of Wittgenstein's attempt to grapple with a big question: how does language connect with reality? How is it that when we say something, it corresponds to something real in the world? For Wittgenstein, language wasn't just about words and grammar, it was a way of modeling or representing reality itself. Let's break this down by starting with the key idea. Wittgenstein's picture theory suggests that the propositions we form in language are like pictures of the facts in the world. When we describe something with words, we are essentially creating a kind of mental picture that mirrors a potential state of affairs out there in reality. This is the heart of the theory. Language and reality are structured in similar ways, allowing us to represent the latter through the former. Now, when we talk about a picture, we don't mean something literal, like a photograph or a painting. Instead, Wittgenstein is using the idea of a picture metaphorically. Think of it as a way to map the structure of the world using symbols and rules. Just as a picture of a house captures the relationships between the walls, the roof, and the doors, a sentence does the same thing. It captures the relationships between objects, actions, and properties in the real world. One way to understand this is to think about a map. A map represents the terrain, but it doesn't need to look exactly like the landscape it represents. The important thing is that it preserves the relationships between different places. One city is to the north of another, or two roads intersect. The map structure corresponds to the structure of the terrain. In the same way, Wittgenstein argued, a sentence or proposition has a structure that corresponds to the structure of a situation in the world. To make this clearer, let's think about a blueprint of a building. The blueprint isn't the building itself, but it represents the building in a detailed and structured way. It tells you where each room, window, and door will be placed. Similarly, a proposition in language is a blueprint for a possible state of affairs in the world. It lays out how things could be arranged and helps us understand the logical form behind what we see and experience. Now, let's apply this concept to something more modern: computer languages. In programming, we use logical structures to represent actions and objects. Think about how a software program uses code to tell a computer to perform specific actions. When you write code, each line corresponds to a set of instructions, and these instructions, in turn, reflect certain logical possibilities. For instance, when a program displays an image on the screen, the code pictures the relationships between pixels, colors, and coordinates. This logic maps onto what actually happens on the computer screen. Wittgenstein's idea of language as a picture works in much the same way. It's about using symbols, whether words or code, to model possible realities. But Wittgenstein's theory goes even deeper. He believed that every proposition in language can be broken down into elementary propositions, which correspond to the most basic, indivisible facts in the world. Just as a complex picture can be broken down into smaller elements, sentences can be reduced to simpler components that reflect the simplest possible states of affairs. It's important to note that Wittgenstein's theory was more than just an explanation of how language works. It was also a way of framing how we think about reality itself. To him, the limits of our language were the limits of our world. If something couldn't be pictured in language, it couldn't be meaningfully thought or talked about. This is why Wittgenstein was so concerned with the logical structure of language. He wanted to show that our capacity to represent the world is tied directly to the way our language is built. However, it's also worth noting that Wittgenstein later revised many of these ideas in his later work, Philosophical Investigations. He came to believe that language is much more fluid and multifaceted than the rigid structure he initially proposed. But his early theory in the Tractatus remains an essential milestone in understanding the connection between language, thought, and reality. Wittgenstein's picture theory of meaning proposes that propositions in language are like pictures or models of reality. Each sentence mirrors a possible state of affairs in the world by preserving the logical structure of how things relate to each other. This groundbreaking idea helps us understand not only how language works, but also how we as human beings grasp the world through language. Think about this the next time you look at a map, a blueprint, or even a line of computer code. Each of these things is a model, a picture of something real. In the same way, when you speak or write, you are creating a picture of the world, using the logical structure of language to represent how things could be or are. Thank you for learning with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into similar echoes.